Tell me, where is fancy bread? In the heart or in the head? This comes from a quote from the 1500s from Shakespeare. Does fancy imagination come from the heart or from the head? It might seem like a really strange quote to get any excitement about, but it does capture a shift in pop culture at the time in the 1500s when people were getting concerned about whether or not consciousness came from the head, the brain, or the torso, your heart. Because as far as human experience goes, cross-culturally, for the most part, we've just assumed that ourselves, our consciousness, our experience of the world really stems from your torso, the heart. When you get excited, you might feel butterflies, you might feel your heart pounding. When you get scared, you feel it in your torso. You usually don't feel it in your head. There is a really interesting diversity in thought when you look at the ancient world. So the traditional or dominant school of thought was that of Aristotle's, which was consciousness lies in the heart, the control center for your thoughts, emotions, feelings, memories, your voluntary movements of muscle, if you want to catch a ball, if you want to run, if you want to swim, all of that is done from the heart, right? Consciousness. But the head was just this, inside the skull was this gray, whitish, mushy material that just regulated the blood, right? And it wasn't until the 200s where you had this physician, Galen of Pergamon. So Galen, he worked with the gladiators in Rome, and he noticed that a lot of these Roman gladiators, after suffering head trauma, they would lose certain abilities, they would suffer cognitive impairment, they would have behavioral changes, they would lose their voices, they would lose the ability to speak from taking a blow to the head. And so then he's kind of like, what's going on there? It seems that we all think this control center is in the heart. It clearly isn't. It seems to be the brain. And then so what Galen does is he actually gets a pig. And in front of the opposing school of thought, they crack open the pig and they squeeze its heart so that the blood isn't going to anywhere else in the body. And the pig is squealing, it's going crazy. And then they crack open the skull and they squeeze the brain, and immediately the pig loses consciousness. And so then it was sort of determined in front of all these people that, okay, consciousness isn't within the heart, but the control center is actually within our heads. And being the rational beings that we humans are, you'd think that after this experiment or demonstration takes place, you'd think that there'd be a shift in public opinion. But there's really not. There's not a shift until after the scientific revolution, 18th, 19th century, that there's any sort of shift or consensus formed that the mind is stored or housed within the head and not within the body. And I think one of the main ironies of this is consciousness is arguably the thing that we're most familiar with, right? It's our entire subjective experience of the world, yet there's so many basic fundamental questions about it that just remain unanswered, right? We still don't exactly know where is consciousness stored, right? We can't just look at the brain and say, yeah, it's the entire thing, because that's not necessarily true. Someone can have a lobotomy and have a piece of their brain removed and they're still conscious, right? And we also can't say that there's a specific circuit, a specific neural network, a specific structure where this is where consciousness is, this is where it lies, right? At what point are we actually conscious? Most people can't even remember before they were 3, right? Were we conscious when we were in utero, right? Were we conscious when we were 1 years old? In the medical world, medical field, there's a lot of contention around someone on life support and at what point they're no longer conscious, right? And we can look at someone and say they seem unconscious, but this brain activity that we're reading, it seems that there might be a conscious being still in there.